The murder of Bridget Cleary, often referred to as the last witch burned in Ireland, took place in 1895 in the rural village of Ballyvadlea, County Tipperary. Bridget Cleary, a young woman in her 30s, was brutally murdered by her husband, Michael Cleary, with the belief that she had been replaced by a changeling, a supernatural being. The small Irish village of Ballyvadlea is quiet as evening falls. The smell of fresh turf smoke lingers in the air, and the distant sounds of livestock and the rustling of leaves seem to hold a particular weight. The village, tucked away in the green hills of County Tipperary, seems like any other sleepy town in the Irish countryside, but something sinister has come to this place. It is a world where the line between the living and the supernatural is thin, where old myths still echo in the bones of the earth. And in this world, one woman will die, a death so brutal, so tragic, it will become a symbol of superstition's power over the human mind. This is the story of Bridget Cleary. In the Cleary household, Bridget Cleary sits quietly by the hearth. She is beautiful, strong, and full of life. Her hair, a deep auburn, catches the firelight as she adjusts the shawl around her shoulders. Her husband, Michael Cleary, watches her from the doorway, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. There is an eerie tension in the air, a sense of something wrong, yet unspoken. Bridget Cleary, a woman in the prime of her life, was a seamstress and the beloved daughter of a nearby farmer. But her life would take a tragic turn, when her husband, Michael, began to believe that his wife was no longer his wife, that she had been replaced by a changeling, a fairy creature, and that the woman who sat by the fire was an imposter. Bridget Cleary, shakily, Michael, what are you saying? I'm your wife. Have always been your wife. Michael Cleary, glaring with suspicion, you are not my wife. The woman I married is gone, and you are not her. Bridget looks confused and alarmed, her eyes wide with terror as she stares at her husband. The tension in the room builds, the crackling of the fire amplifying the eeriness of the situation. Bridget's health has been failing, and her behavior has changed, though it's unclear whether it's due to illness or something more sinister. Michael, deeply influenced by local superstition and folklore, believes his wife has been taken by the fairies. He consults a local healer and is convinced that the only way to return his wife to him is through an ancient ritual, a ritual that requires her death. In the remote corners of rural Ireland, old beliefs still ran deep. The fairies, or the good people, were thought to live in the hills and forests, and their wrath could turn a once lovable person into something else, something sinister. As Bridget's health declined, Michael became obsessed with the idea that she was no longer his beloved wife. He was convinced she had been replaced by a changeling, a creature born of the supernatural. The camera focuses on the increasingly erratic Michael Cleary as he gathers a group of villagers, including his own father, to carry out the ritual. The plan is simple and horrific. They will burn Bridget to rid her of the changeling spirit. The men tie her to a bed, and Michael, with a trembling hand, sets fire to the house. What followed that night was unspeakable. As the flames grew, the villagers stood by helplessly, unsure of what they were witnessing. Bridget Cleary, her body consumed by fire, screamed out in agony, but there was no one who could stop it. She was, in their eyes, already a monster, her humanity stripped away by fear and superstition. Bridget Cleary's charred body is discovered the next morning. Her murder is not immediately understood, but rumors swirl around the village, and soon the police arrive. Michael Cleary, who initially claimed that Bridget had died accidentally in the fire, is arrested. The investigation reveals a shocking truth. Bridget's death was not an accident, but a cold, deliberate act of violence. Bridget Cleary's death was not just a tragedy, it was a horrifying glimpse into the depths of superstition that still held sway in the Irish countryside. The belief that Bridget had been replaced by a changeling led to the most brutal and shocking of endings. And as Michael Cleary is arrested, the mystery of his motives deepens. In the following weeks, Michael Cleary is put on trial for the murder of his wife. The evidence is damning. Bridget's body shows clear signs of violence, and Michael's confession is nothing short of chilling. But as the trial unfolds, something strange begins to surface. Michael's story doesn't add up. The trial of Michael Cleary became a spectacle, not just of justice, but of superstition's power over the human mind. What drove a man to kill the woman he once loved, believing she had been replaced by a fairy? Was Michael Cleary truly insane, or was there something more to the story that no one could see? As the trial progresses, it becomes clear that Michael's guilt is undeniable. But his defense, insanity brought on by the belief in the changeling myth, raises serious questions. Was Michael simply a victim of his own delusions? Or was there something more sinister at play, something buried beneath the surface of this quiet village? The case of Bridget Cleary is one of the most chilling in Irish history. Her death was not just the result of one man's madness, it was a reflection of a time when fear and superstition ruled the lives of those who lived in the shadows of ancient beliefs. But even as the court found Michael Cleary guilty, there were questions that would never be answered, and an unsettling feeling that lingered long after the trial ended. The final moments of the story leave the audience with more questions than answers. As Michael Cleary is taken away to prison, a strange rumor begins to circulate, a rumor that perhaps Bridget's body was not the only thing that had been replaced. In the weeks following her murder, other villagers begin to experience strange occurrences, disappearances, inexplicable phenomena, and whispers of changelings once again. But even as the case was closed, a chilling thought lingered in the hearts of the people of Ballyvadlea. What if Bridget Cleary hadn't been the only one to suffer at night? What if, in the darkness, something more sinister still roamed the hills? The village of Ballyvadlea is once again quiet, but there's a palpable unease in the air. The hills are mist-shrouded, the wind colder, and the darkness seems to settle deeper. In the dead of night, an old woman stirs by the fire, muttering ancient prayers, her eyes wide with fear. Months have passed since Bridget Cleary's death, but her presence still lingers in the hearts of the villagers. Michael Cleary has been locked away, the case closed. But what if the true horror had yet to reveal itself? In the quiet corners of Ballyvadlea, something otherworldly stirs, something ancient, something that defies explanation. It is a crisp, autumn morning in Ballyvadlea. A young boy, around 12 years old, is walking along a familiar path to the market, but as he passes by the woods near the Cleary household, something catches his eye. He freezes. There, in the distance, a pale figure stands in the fog, her hair wild and unkempt, her clothes tattered. The boy's heart races. He calls out, but the figure doesn't respond. With every step he takes forward, the figure grows more indistinct, as though slipping into the fog, vanishing before his very eyes. It was only the beginning. The first of many strange sightings, many inexplicable disappearances. The villagers whispered, uncertain whether their fears were born from superstition or something more. The legends of changelings, of spirits that walked among the living, began to resurface. A month after Bridget's death, a healer from a neighboring village, Eileen O'Shea, arrives in Ballyvadlea. She is known for her knowledge of old folklore and remedies, though many find her methods unorthodox. Eileen hears about the recent disturbances and begins to investigate. Eileen visits Michael Cleary in prison, a grim, solitary figure. He's a shell of the man he once was, his eyes wide with terror as he speaks of Bridget's vengeful spirit. "They didn't do it, you have to believe ma. It wasn't her, it wasn't Bridget. The fairies, they came for her. They left me nothing but a hollow shell." Michael, it's none of your beliefs. But you have to understand, what you saw was not a changeling. It was something far darker, something that you couldn't have understood at the time. But Michael wasn't the only one to suffer from the twisted grip of superstition. Eileen O'Shea, determined to uncover the truth, would soon realize that the curse of Ballyvadlea went far deeper than any of them had anticipated. Eileen, determined to discover the truth, ventures into the Cleary home. The house is quiet, they're heavy with the weight of what happened there. As she steps inside, she feels a chill run down her spine. She walks through the house, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness, as she examines the remnants of Bridget's life, her sewing table, her favorite chair by the fire, and a small locket on the mantel. Suddenly, the silence is broken by the faintest sound, the crackling of the fire that isn't there, a whisper that seems to come from the walls themselves. Eileen feels a sudden coldness wash over her. As Eileen stepped deeper into the house, she began to sense an unseen presence, an energy that lingered in the very walls, an energy that was not of this world. The rumors of Bridget's ghost began to seem all too real, but was this just the manifestation of grief, or something far more terrifying? The unexplainable events continue, but one night, the quiet is shattered again. Another body is discovered in the woods near Ballyvadlea. A young woman, barely in her 20s, is found, her body marked with similar burn marks as Bridget's. Her family claims she was in perfect health, but something about her appearance is unsettling. Her expression is frozen in a silent scream, her features twisted in terror. The local police are baffled. At first, they dismiss it as another tragic accident, but whispers soon begin to spread. Was this another victim of the changelings, or was there a darker, more twisted force at work in Ballyvadlea? As the second body was uncovered, the village could no longer deny it. There was something at work here, something beyond their understanding. Superstition had bled into reality, and the people of Ballyvadlea were once again gripped by fear. But what was the true cause of these deaths? A curse? A supernatural vendetta? Or something much more human? Eileen, growing more determined, speaks with Michael once more. His appearance is even more disheveled, his once pristine clothes are torn, and his eyes are wild with panic. She was never gone. The changelings, they are still here. You don't understand. They are coming for all of us. Michael, tell me what you know. Please. The village is dying under this curse. If you know anything, you must tell me. They will come for you too, Eileen. They will come for all of us. The fairies, they don't forget. And if you think you can stop them, you're wrong. Thought she was gone, but she's still here, still watching. Eileen, now determined to find the truth, skitters the village for clues. She uncovers an old journal hidden in the attic of a local widow who had lived near the Cleary family for years. The journal contains cryptic entries about a mysterious figure seen near the Cleary house just before Bridget's death, a figure described as a tall, shadowy man with piercing eyes. The widow claimed that the man had been seen speaking to Bridget late at night, whispering to her in strange, incomprehensible tongues. Eileen is stunned. Could this mysterious figure have been involved in the deaths? And why did no one in the village speak of him? The pieces were slowly coming together, but Eileen knew that the final truth would be even darker than she imagined. The changelings were not simply creatures of myth. The man in the shadows was no stranger to the village, and the history of Ballyvadlea was far more twisted than anyone could have ever known. As Eileen sits by her fire that night, deep in thought, a knock echoes through her door. She opens it to find no one, only a small, intricately carved wooden figurine on the doorstep. It's a changeling, or so it seems, a nerdy, lifelike figure with an unnatural, twisted smile. She picks it up, feeling the cold wood in her hands, when suddenly, a voice calls from behind her. Mysterious voice, soft, chilling. You're looking in the wrong place, Eileen. The truth lies much closer than you think. Eileen spins around, but the room is empty. Her heart races. The truth was within reach, but as Eileen O'Shea would soon learn, some mysteries were never meant to be solved. And some forces, dark, ancient forces, were never meant to be disturbed. The screen opens on the village of Ballyvadlea. The mist is thick in air, and the once quiet houses are now dark and abandoned, as if the land itself has been abandoned by life. A distant church bell tolls the air, and the winds howl through the trees. Eileen O'Shea walks down the path toward the Cleary house, her steps cautious, her eyes wary. Her breath fogs in the cold air, but she's determined. She feels that the truth is within her grasp. It was the third night since Eileen received the strange warning, and she could feel the danger closing in. Something dark had been unleashed upon the village, and it was only a matter of time before it claimed her as well. Eileen returns to her cottage, exhausted from her search. As she enters, she is met by an overwhelming sense of unease. The fire crackles faintly in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room. She places the changeling figure on the table, her fingers trembling slightly. The figure seems almost alive, its hollow eyes staring back at her. She cannot shake the feeling that something is watching her. Suddenly, there's a loud knock at the door. Eileen freezes. Who would be at this hour? She opens the door, and the wind howls through, but there is no one in sight. A small bundle lies on her doorstep. Her heart races as she picks it up and unwraps it. Inside is a piece of parchment, yellowed with age. The writing is faint, but she can still make it out. The changelings are not always what they seem. The message was called. The changelings, these creatures that haunted the village, were not simply folklore, not just vengeful spirits or supernatural forces. The real changeling, Eileen would soon realize, had been standing in front of her all along. Eileen's eyes narrow as she examines the note. There's a sense of urgency in the air, and she feels an overwhelming need to learn more about the history of the village. Late that night, she ventures to the village archives, a dusty and forgotten place hidden in the bells of an old church. There, she finds an ancient journal, its leather binding cracked and weathered. The pages are filled with cryptic writings, references to changelings, to ancient rites, and to a curse that stretches back centuries. She uncovers an entry that refers to a bloodline in Ballyvadlea that had long been rumored to have ties to the fairy realm. The Cleary family was among the last of these bloodlines, and Bridget herself was believed to be a part of a curse passed down through generations. The journal speaks of a man named Cormac Akana, an ancient relative of the Cleary family who had supposedly made a pact with the Old Ones, a mysterious, otherworldly force. The pact promised prayer in exchange for the souls of the descendants of Cormac's family. Bridget Cleary, it seemed, had been marked from birth as the final sacrifice to break the curse. The village of Ballyvadlea had been cursed long before Bridget Cleary had been born. The Cleary family, it seemed, was entwined with a darkness that no one understood, a darkness that would claim its final victim unless the curse was broken. But the question remained, who had broken the curse, and who was the true monster? Eileen's heart pants as she sifts through the journal's pages. The ancient entries describe the changelings as not only malevolent spirits but as a manifestation of the bloodline's sins. The changelings, it is said, would weigh the face of a loved one, but with hollow eyes and twisted smiles, as a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath their skin. A sickening realization begins to form in Eileen's mind. She remembers Michael Colliers' words in prison, the terror in his voice as he spoke of the changelings and their relentless pursuit of the Cleary family. He had believed that Bridget was one, that the woman he had loved had been taken by the fairies, and in his madness, he had murdered her to bring her back. But Eileen now understands that Michael himself was never the true killer. The changelings were real, but they were not supernatural creatures, they were born of blood and sacrifice, of generations long forgotten. As Eileen closes the journal, a sudden chill sweeps over her. The room grows cold, and the lights flicker. She hears footsteps behind her. Slowly, she turns. A figure stands in the doorway. Eileen whispers, "No, it can't be you." The figure steps into the light, and for the first time, Eileen sees it, the face of Bridget Cleary, her features twisted and contorted, her eyes black holes. The changeling, dressed in the same tattered cloths, smiles grotesquely. The truth was more terrifying than Eileen had ever imagined. The changeling that stood before her wasn't a creature from another world, it was the thing that had been buried deep in the heart of Ballyvadlea. Bridget Cleary had never been fully human, and the curse that plagued the Cleary family was more than a legend. It was a reality that was now coming to claim its next victim. The village of Ballyvadlea has grown darker. Whispers of Eileen's discovery spread, and the once peaceful streets are now filled with fear and suspicion. The villagers grow restless, afraid that the changelings will come for them next. Many leave the village, abandoning their homes and families, while others huddle together, praying that the curse will finally break. Eileen, however, cannot escape the shadow of the changelings. No matter where she goes, their faces seem to follow her. She is haunted by the knowledge that the Cleary family bloodline must be cleansed, but the cost of breaking the curse may be far higher than she could ever have imagined. As the terror spreads, Eileen realizes that there is only one way to end the curse, but to do so, she must risk everything. The changeling that walks among them is only a symptom of a far greater evil, one that has been festering in the land for centuries. And only one question remains: will Eileen be strong enough to face the truth, or will she too fall prey to the forces she has uncovered? The village is eerily silent as Eileen prepares to confront the changeling. She steps out into the moonlight, her heart heavy with dread, knowing that the future of Ballyvadlea hangs in the balance. As she walks toward the Cleary house, the wind picks up, carrying with it a strange, almost mournful sound. Suddenly, a figure steps out of the shadows. It's Michael Cleary. Eileen in disbelief. Michael? Hey, you're not real. Michael's eyes are empty, hollow, like the changelings. Michael Cleary, in a low, rasping voice. You should have stayed away, Eileen. The curse, it doesn't end with me. As Michael reaches out toward her, Eileen feels the darkness closing in around her. She can hear the wind screaming through the trees, the sound of footsteps behind her growing louder and louder, until she can no longer tell where the sound ends and where her own heartbeat begins. In that final moment, as the village of Ballyvadlea trembled on the brink of annihilation, Eileen realized the terrible truth. The changelings were not just a curse, they were the final reckoning of a bloodline that had come to claim its due. The night is cold and still as Eileen stands in the moonlit clearing outside the Cleary house. Her heart pounds in her chest, and the darkness seems to press in from every side. Michael Cleary's twisted figure looms before her, his hollow eyes locking onto hers with an eerie, unnerving calm. The curse that had plagued the Cleary family for generations was now alive, breathing in the shadows of Ballyvadlea. But in that stillness, amidst the whispering winds and the distant sound of haunting footsteps, Eileen O'Shea knew that she could no longer hide from the truth. The changelings were real, and they had come for her. Eileen takes a step back, the weight of her discovery heavy on her shoulders. She had learned everything she could about the curse, the changelings, and the terrible secret buried deep in the Cleary family's past. But now, in the presence of the twisted figure before her, nothing felt certain. Michael's voice is low, almost a whisper. Michael Cleary, hoarsely. It's too late. The curse is mine to bear, Eileen. It's in our blood, and now it will never leave. Eileen's fingers tremble as she reaches for the bundle she has carried with her, an ancient relic, the only hope she has to end the madness once and for all. The changeling figure, a carved doll from her research, its eyes seemingly watching every movement. She clutches it to her chest, feeling its power hum against her skin. Eileen raises her eyes to Michael, a sense of determination flooding her veins. Eileen O'Shea, firmly. I'm not afraid of you, Michael. You're just another victim of this curse. And I will break it, even if it means sacrificing everything. Michael's expression changes, something cold and empty flickers in his eyes. The wind picks up around them, and the trees sway as if in response to the growing tension. Eileen feels the energy shift as though something ancient is awakening on the soil beneath her feet. Michael Cleary, whispering urgently. Don't you see? You can't break it. You can only delay it. The ground beneath them begins to tremble. Eileen's heart races as she watches Michael step forward, his hands trembling. His eyes are wide with madness, and for a brief moment, she sees him for who he truly is, a man consumed by fear, trapped in the grip of a curse beyond his control. Suddenly, the ground splits open at Michael's feet, and a figure emerges from the earth. It's tall, shadowy, and its presence is suffocating. The changeling, the ancient entity that had plagued the Cleary family for generations, now reveals itself. What stood before Eileen was not a creature of flesh and blood, but an entity forged from ancient magic, a spirit that had long awaited its release. It was the culmination of the Cleary family's darkest secret, a force that could never be outrun or hidden from. The changeling's form shifts, its features becoming a grotesque version of Bridget Cleary's face. Its eyes are hollow, dark voids, and its smile is twisted and cruel. Changeling, in a voice that echoes like 100 whispers. You should have left, Eileen. You should have never come back. Eileen takes a deep breath, steadying herself. She knows she is standing at the threshold of life and death, hers, Michael's, and the entire village's. The changeling moves closer, and Eileen feels a coldness creep into her bones. She holds up the relic, her last hope. Eileen O'Shea, defiantly. To know what you are, and know what you've done, but also know how to stop you. The changeling recoils, its face contorting in fury. The air is stuck with the smell of earth and decay, and Eileen can hear the howling wind growing louder, as though the world itself is mourning. The figure seems to hesitate for a moment, as if sensing that its time is running out. The changeling's power was formidable, born of centuries of curse and blood. But in that moment, Eileen O'Shea held the only key to ending it, a key that could shatter the changeling's hold over the Cleary family, and perhaps even over the land itself. The question was, would it be enough? Eileen steps forward, her voice rising above the howling winds. Eileen O'Shea, shitting. They break the curse of the Cleary family. They sever its hold over this land and over you. With a first motion, she thrusts the relic into the changeling's chest. The figure lets out a terrible scream, its body twisting and contorting violently, as though it's being torn apart from the inside. The earth cracks beneath their feet as the changeling writhes, but Eileen does not look away. She stands her ground, knowing that this is the only way to end the nightmare that has haunted Ballyvadlea. The relic glows with an intense, blinding light, and the changeling's form begins to disintegrate into smoke and shadow. The curse was breaking, but at what cost? Eileen had struck at the very heart of the darkness that had consumed the Cleary family for so long. But with the Changeling's destruction, a great price would be paid, one that could not be undone. As the Changeling vanishes, the winds die down, and the village falls into an eerie silence. Eileen drops to her knees, gasping for breath. Her vision swims, and she feels the weight of exhaustion bearing down on her. The relic, now blackened and charred, falls from her hands. She stares at it, her mind racing. Eileen ashes, weakly. It's over. It's finally over. But just as she begins to allow herself a moment of relief, she hears the faintest sound. Footsteps, echoing through the empty village. Eileen's eyes snap open, and she stands, her legs trembling. She turns slowly, fear creeping up her spine. The footsteps grow louder, but there's no one in sight. A shadow crosses the village, moving impossibly fast. And again, from the darkness, a voice calls out to her. "You've only scratched the surface, Eileen. The curse will never truly end." Eileen freezes, her breath catching on her throat. She feels the hairs on the back of her neck rise as the voice echoes around her. Slowly, she realizes that the Changeling's defeat was not the end, but the beginning of something far more sinister. The final battle had been fought, but the war was far from over. The Changeling had been destroyed, but the dark force that had summoned it still lingered. And in the shadows, it waited, biding its time until the next victim called upon the curse. Eileen looks around the empty streets of Ballyvadlea. For the first time, she feels truly alone, trapped in a nightmare that she may never escape. As the camera pans out over the village, the screen fades to black, the sound of distant footsteps echoing one final time. The curse may have been broken, but the land of Ballyvadlea would never be the same. The echoes of the Changeling still haunt the village, its legacy, its bloodline, its darkness, waiting to claim yet another soul.